Rick and Morty has been around for well over a decade. Wait, what? Even though the series first aired in 2013, it wasn't until 4 years later when I finally decided to give it a chance. After watching every episode at that point, I thought, Rick and Morty is amazing. From about late 2017 to early 2019, I was obsessed with the show, to an obnoxious degree. If you knew me during this time, then chances are you probably wanted to stab me in the stomach every time I talked about how great the show is. Back then I had just turned 18, and being able to enjoy a show like this without shame from my parents felt really good. I bought t-shirts, a poster. In fact, if you've ever seen any of my older videos, then you'd probably notice it hung up in the background. And even the portal gun that lights up on any surface like a torch. I even dressed up as Rick for a college Halloween pub crawl. I had to give a presentation the next morning. Spoiler alert, I passed, in spite of the terrible hangover I was suffering from while presenting. Thank God for tea. Now if you read the title of this video, then you know that at some point during 2019, my interest in the show had started to wane, and this video will explain why that is the case. But before that, let's talk about why I liked the show and what it did right. Rick and Morty is an adult animated sci-fi satirical black comedy created by Justin Roiland and Dan Harmon. It revolves around the wacky adventures of the Smith family. You've got the parents Jerry and Beth, along with their kids, Summer, Morty, and their grandfather Rick Sanchez. The two main characters of the series were Rick and Morty.
Hey, that's the name of the show.
So let's talk about them first. Rick is a scientific genius, but is also a nihilistic alcoholic. He looks down on people who aren't as smart as him, which is pretty much everyone in his eyes. Morty, on the other hand, is your typical 14-year-old kid who just wants to live a normal life, but consistently ends up getting involved in his grandfather's adventures. He's kind-hearted, if not a bit naive. Morality-wise, these two couldn't be any more different, and that's why the chemistry between them is brilliant. I think it'd actually be kinda boring if these two had the same philosophies and outlook on life. If you ask me who I think is my favourite in the show, it'd have to be Morty. That's because he's the most relatable, and I also feel sorry for him at points. If I was in Morty's shoes back when I was 14, I'd most likely end up acting exactly like him, because how else would you react if you were on some random planet or in a situation you're not familiar with? What about the rest of the family? Let's look at Morty's sister, Summer. She's cool, I like her. She doesn't get involved as much compared to Morty when it comes to the space and dimensional stuff in the show, but when she does, it's great. Jerry is just...
Jerry!
And Beth can't stop drinking wine. There's a lot of other characters in this show I could talk about, but to be honest, I don't feel like it because I don't care enough about them to warrant doing that. And besides, this video is about why I don't care about the show anymore. So let's do exactly that then, shall we? Looking back, I think the comedy in the show prior to season 3 is pretty good. While I don't think every joke in season 1 and 2 is laugh out loud hilarious, most of them make me chuckle at the very least. By the time I caught up with the series, season 3 was still airing, so naturally I was in the middle of all that hype and wasn't really thinking critically about season 3 as a whole. Speaking of said hype, it's like the show was starting to believe in how popular it was becoming by that point. In seasons 1 and 2, I find the humour, for the most part, to be really clever. Jokes that would go over your head if you're not paying attention. That's probably where the "you need to have a high enough IQ to understand Rick and Morty" meme came from. Of course, there's also the in-your-face jokes that people would recognise, but those moments don't come around as often compared to later seasons, and at worst, they're just minor annoyances that don't overstay their welcome. But from season 3 onwards, it feels as though the writers started to take those same in-your-face jokes, amplify and then multiply them to the extreme. I don't know how else to describe these episodes other than the fact that they are infamous in one way or another. One of these episodes is season 3's Pickle Rick. I don't actually hate this one at all, but at the same time, I can understand why others might think this is awful. Now, I said I don't hate this episode. It doesn't mean I like it either. Basically, the episode is about Rick turning himself into a pickle. Because of course he can. This was done so he doesn't have to attend a family counselling session with Beth, Summer and Morty. The whole joke here is that he basically turns himself into a pickle. And that's it. I might be speculating here, but I think this was an intentional move by the writers. They really wanted Pickle Rick to be a meme so hard. Like I said in the previous part, the writers were starting to believe in the show's hype. I mean, the way Rick just shouts,
"I'm Pickle Rick!"
feels forced. When you actually think about it, why did he turn himself into a pickle of all things? Why would he be this happy over it? If he didn't want to go to therapy that much, he should have just gone in his spaceship and flown to some random planet. It's not like Beth can track him down if he does so. Also, Beth could have just grabbed Rick and taken him with her. It's not like he could run away because he's literally a pickle. If you can't tell. Well, why aren't you laughing? I think one of the best aspects of this episode is the action. It shows just how capable Rick is without his tech. He uses his ingenuity to improvise throughout his journey to see the therapist. You know, because he had like a change of heart or something, I can't remember. It's really cool, if not ridiculous. Honestly, compared to the rest of the episodes we're going to cover in this segment, this one is nowhere near as off-putting. I don't know how else to describe these episodes other than they contain a lot of, insect. In Season 5's Rick Dependent Spray, Rick tries to create a bioweapon so he can use it against a race of cannibalistic horse people using horse white paint that he got from the hospital Beth works at. The problem is that Morty uses the same machine used on the horses to relieve himself.
Morty, you dirty little doggy.
And his white paint mixes with the horse's white paint. What a delightful image that is. This results in his Seaman becoming huge and killing people in their wake. With help from the President and the US Army, they'll help to take down the Seaman. Summer suggests enlarging a woman's egg, using it to get their attention and then kill them on sight before they get to it. That sounds like a good plan. So, who volunteered? Summer? Why? Yeah, this is where the insect stuff begins. Could they not have picked some random woman who's not related to Morty? Why does it have to be Summer? Why didn't this lady volunteer? What if one of those Seaman get inside the egg? Well, you don't have to think about it, because that's exactly what happened.
Fuck!
They shoot the egg into space, and it turns into a giant insect baby floating around in space.
You're Sports Illustrated's Kathy Ireland.
That technically means Morty and Summer had a kid together.
You two motherfuckers need Jesus.
Even if that wasn't their intention, it's still messed up, even by the standards of the show. There's being edgy, and then there's this. By the way, you know what they call the baby? Naruto.
I'll keep an eye out for my grandkid in space.
You're what? Oh, right, Naruto.
Thanks a lot, Rick and Morty. Next time I watch an episode of Naruto, I'll forever be reminded of Giant Insect Baby. At least this bit made me laugh hard.
Oh, why? It had a gun!
Are you out of your mind bringing an armed sperm in here?
In Season 6's Bethic Twinstinct, Space Beth visits the Smith household for Thanksgiving. She and regular Beth begin to develop feelings for each other. This eventually evolves into a serious relationship, and they do some copulation. It is worth saying, in case any of you didn't know, but Space Beth is the original Beth, who wants to go on space adventures of her own, while regular Beth is a clone who is content with staying on Earth. So with all that in mind, them being in a relationship isn't exactly insect, but rather self-sect. Yeah, that one doesn't really work. Obviously it's not real, and it most likely never will be, but assuming it was real, then it would still be all kinds of weird. However, if you look at this relationship from a different point of view, then you can make an argument that Space Beth is a physical manifestation of regular Beth learning to love herself and let loose a bit. It doesn't sound like that bad of an idea, but at the same time, the show could have done this in a more subtle manner. Basically in a way that doesn't involve Beth, in the words of Jimmy Carr,
Smashing pasties.
with her clone. It only took 2 episodes later to find the next messed up storyline. Final Dismitation. Final Dismitation? I can't pronounce that one. In this one, Jerry reads a fortune cookie and his fortune says that he will procreate with his mother.
You will have sex with your mother.
Now that's just nasty, but they're just fortunes. It's not actually gonna happen, right? Right? Jerry can't stop thinking about it, so Rick decides to help him out, and he realizes that the probability of his fortune is extremely high. So they decide to go to the place where they create fortune cookies in the hopes of finding out their secrets and putting an end to it at once. It turns out that they are being created by an alien that can control one's fate, with its caretaker deciding what the fortune is. This means Jerry has to fulfill his destiny, no matter how much he doesn't want to. The CEO of the company brings Jerry's mum to make sure the fortune happens. In the end, Jerry eats a fortune cookie given to him by Rick that cancels out the previous fortune. Thank God, that was a close call. You know what the funny thing about this episode is? It's actually entertaining. If they literally change the fortune so that Jerry has to, I don't know, kill his mother instead of doing the birds and the bees with her, then that would be just as dire of circumstances. Aside from that, everything else from this episode is great. Both the guards and Rick using fortune cookies to fight each other is a neat concept that was executed brilliantly. With that being said, however, I still find it hard watching this episode because the whole insect plot looms over the entire thing, that I can't recommend watching it without putting an asterisk next to it. I know this reason might be a bit harsh, as it's not the fault of the show itself, but even if that's the case, it still doesn't change my stance on this particular matter. Rick and Morty is obviously not the first show to have such an annoying fanbase, and it will most certainly not be the last. Of course, not every fan of a show is a bad apple, but in the case of the Rick and Morty fanbase, those few bad apples tend to be a very loud minority that it's hard to ignore them. I think 2017-18, which was during the show's peak in popularity, was when these types of fans show just how annoying they can truly be. First, you've got the Szechuan sauce guy. Basically, this video involves one gentleman politely asking for some Szechuan sauce, a few McDonald's employees, and some customers who just wanted to eat some fast food in peace. Upon realizing that there is no Szechuan sauce, he jumps on the counter a few times, yells out some quotes from Rick and Morty.
I'm Pickle Rick! What beloved doctor! I'm Pickle Rick!
Rides in agony on the floor, and then Naruto runs out of the building.
Just ran straight out of the building.
At the time this video came out, I didn't find it funny at all. It was more cringy than anything. Since then, I've worked a few retail jobs that involved dealing with customers. Working these jobs gave me a new perspective on life. These types of jobs are tough. You work minimum wage, your tasks are mundane, and you rarely have time to think or relax. For me, my biggest fear while working these jobs is having to deal with difficult or unpredictable customers. That's why, looking back on this video, I actually feel sorry for these McDonald's employees, and I don't find it funny in the slightest. Turns out it was all staged, and the guy was just being an ass. He literally just wasted their time. Now, what does Szechuan sauce have to do with Rick and Morty? Well, in 1998, Disney did a promotional tie-in with McDonald's for Mulan, with Szechuan sauce being part of the menu for a limited time, and it didn't come back until 2017 after Rick visited a McDonald's from 1998 just so he could get the sauce during season 3 of the show. So naturally, Rick and Morty fans who never got to experience the sauce back then wanted to try it out for themselves because of the show. All this led to the Szechuan sauce riots of 2017. Basically, select McDonald's restaurants across America were given out a limited supply of Szechuan sauce for a limited time. People were camping outside just so they could try it out before everyone else, and literal fights broke out. There's a video by a guy called Boo who did a whole video covering the topic. I'll leave a link to his video in the description if you want to check it out. Okay, I'm done talking about sauce now. Let's move on. There's that video of a guy who got a Pickle Rick tattoo, surrounded by people dressed up as Rick and are hyped to the gills.
Pickle Rick!
You also have people dressing up as characters on Musical.ly, which was the original TikTok, and make a complete ass of themselves by lip syncing to pop songs or other random stuff that were unrelated to the show. Kinda like My Hero Academia fans, and I like My Hero Academia, in spite of whatever this is.
Take a bite. Here, I'll help. Watch me. Puppy.
Now I have absolutely no problem with people cosplaying or getting tattoos. If I did that, then that would just make me a massive hypocrite. As long as they aren't harming other people or doing anything illegal, then they're free to express themselves. However, when I watch the show nowadays, I tend to think about these kinds of people a lot on a subconscious level. That's mostly because I'm often reminded of what I was like back when my investment in the show was at its peak. Like I said in the beginning of the video, I was a massive fan of the show, and while I wouldn't go as far as to get a tattoo of Pickle Rick on my forearm, I would have at least considered it. Now, the idea of getting such a tattoo would be horrifying. For that Halloween pub crawl I mentioned earlier, I dressed up as Rick purely because it was the only costume I could scramble together in time. I just so happened to have the right clothes needed for it to work. I didn't plan on wearing a costume at all, but I changed my mind in the last minute, mostly because I was thinking, sure, why not? Luckily, things have died down in recent years. That's largely due to the fact that the show isn't as relevant as it used to be back in its heyday. Still, with everything I just mentioned in this segment, whether directly or indirectly, it makes me feel embarrassed for being a fan of the show. Now, this was partially my fault. I binged this series like there was no tomorrow. No one forced me to do so. It was all my own doing. By the time season 4 aired in late 2019, I didn't have the sudden urge to drop everything I was doing in order to watch its premiere. That's largely due to the fact I was busy doing other things in my life, like college work, and just watching other things I enjoyed instead. It wasn't until June 2020, during the first COVID lockdown, and a month after season 4 ended, when I finally decided to watch it. Afterwards, I came to a stunning realization. Rick and Morty just isn't fun to watch anymore. I was definitely going through the motions while watching it, and that's never a good sign. My investment in the show was at an all-time low. I didn't bother watching seasons 5 or 6 when they came out, and for some reason, most likely out of boredom, during the summer of 2023, I decided to watch those 2 seasons. For the purposes of this video, I decided to watch season 7 recently, and it's actually okay. I don't think it was able to recapture the magic of the first 2 seasons. It was still a massive improvement. While I don't think it was able to recapture the magic of the first 2 seasons, it was still a massive improvement. However, with that in mind, it's still not enough to convert me back into a full-on fanboy again. Hello, future me here. While editing the video, season 8 came out, and I completely forgot about season 8, because while I was writing the script, season 8 hadn't come out yet. Season 8 is fine. Once again, it's fine, just like season 7. Although I do like the last episode of the season, but once more, it's still not enough to convert me into a full-time fan again. So, yeah, back to the video now. Rick and Morty will forever be iconic in the world of adult animation, but just like fellow shows such as The Simpsons, Family Guy, and to a lesser extent South Park, the newer episodes don't hold a candle to the older ones. Now it is worth pointing out that I don't hate the show. In fact, I still like the show for what it does right. My point here is that for all the reasons I just explained throughout this video, my love for the series died down significantly in recent times. It's a shame because Rick and Morty has the potential to keep going for as long as other long-running animated sitcoms. There are countless worlds, characters, and storylines you can create and explore in this series. However, if you can't present them in a way that isn't full-on edgy for the sake of being edgy, then maybe it's time for the show to come to an end. So in conclusion, go watch Smiley Friends instead. That show is peak.
Oh yeah, you gotta get swifty. You gotta get swifty in here. It's time to get swifty.